everyone. It is that time again. It's time to chat. It's time to enter the chat with Colette and Matt. I am Matt Silverman. Welcome back to the show. I am here, as always, with the one and only Colette Bennett.
I am ready to talk about the most important topic on planet Earth.
Oh, it's here. It's here. We don't talk about it enough. Okay, once a week is not enough. Here's a thought. 5 days a week.
I mean, hey, if you come into our Discord, you can talk about it 5 days a week with other like-minded people. So plug.
That's true. Link in the description. Before we started rolling here, Colette and I were just singing the praises of our lovely Discord community members and just how nice it is to just say, hey, I was thinking about this thing or this game. What do you all think? And there's just lovely people in there thinking thoughts and sharing their views on all the stuff that we love too.
And no one is ever like, oh, that's stupid, or oh, that's like, you know, that kind of gamer shoot down mindset. Like the people in our Discord are not that way. And I value that so much, to have like really fun conversations with people about games, you know? And like if you like something that they're not so into, it's respectful. It's not like, that's stupid.
I like learning about genres and stuff that I am not familiar with, and you and I get into that here, but it's a wider pool in the community.
Yeah, it really is. It's cool.
So today we're just hanging. We're going to talk about what we've been playing, but first we do have a wonderful email that I'm quite excited about, and this comes in from Alex. Alex says, hello, Colette and Matt. Love the podcast. The episode with God was more enlightening than my 13 years of Catholic school and made my long hour drive last week more enjoyable. Thank you for that. Anywho, as fellow fans of retro games, I was wondering what y'all's opinion is on using CRT filters and fake scan lines when playing pre-HD games, especially 8-bit and 16-bit, on modern TVs, monitors. Alex goes on to say, until recently, I always wanted the cleanest image, quote unquote, and the sharpest pixels possible. And without getting too much in the weeds, I've read some online discourse that made me reconsider my stance, specifically about original artistic intent and how graphics then were made with within the confines of blurriness and scan lines of CRTs. They were not made for the clean, ultra sharp display. This really got me thinking, and after trying out some filters while playing retro games for a while, I have come to prefer it. Alex goes on, of course, not all filters are created equal, but I think the CRT filter on my totally not modded SNES Classic is pretty damn good. It's a great way to play some of my favorites. All that said, I don't think there's any wrong or right way to enjoy these games, but I'm curious how you prefer and go about it. Thanks for the laughs and entertainment from Alex G.
I mean, Alex G, number one, like, holy crap. Thank you for making me think about something that I don't think I've ever thought about before.
Okay.
I haven't. Like, I did. Well, okay. So this is harking back to when I was doing my Silent Hill 2 replay recently. And I was like, well, you know, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it. I want to play the fan remastered HD version with all the like nice texture, you know, restoration. So I played it and I really, really enjoyed seeing this 20-year-old game, you know, looking so nice. But then a fellow streamer friend played it not long after me, and he didn't want to play that version. He wanted to play a version that allowed him to see like the texture and grit of the game. And I really was like, this is one of those situations in which I don't know if I could say HD took away, but it just made it kind of a different experience. And when I saw it with all that grit back on it, I was like, I kind of like how this looks. But I've never thought, ooh, maybe I should try playing like a modern game, but like see what it would be look like CRT style. So that kind of like sets off a little spark in my brain.
Yes, I think these things are adjacent and related, but I would differentiate them because we're talking about a remake where new assets or fan-made assets are being built into the game or the game engine itself, and that is changing the experience. But specifically with CRT, it's like the data is the same. The pixels are the same. the pixels from the cartridge of a NES game are the same as the data in the ROM that you are playing. But what's different is that they're in the 80s and 90s, they were being filtered through a CRT, a tube television. And now, if you look at those same pixels on any modern device, you're seeing the same data, but your eyes are not seeing the same image. And so it's a technological filter problem. The fascinating thing that Alex is getting to here, which I love quite a bit, is the artists who made those pixels in 1989 made them to look a certain way on a CRT because there was no other way.
Right.
Those pixels now look different when on a modern device. I can't think of an analogy. I guess it's like, Da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa by candlelight. So are we truly seeing the Mona Lisa correctly today when there's LEDs shining on her in the Louvre?
Right.
That's a stupid example, but I think it's about artist's intent versus consumer intent. And I agree with Alex that there is no right or wrong way. But I love good CRT filters. I find them fun. I find them to look and feel. It makes the pixels a bit mushier in a way that I think is warm and nice from a nostalgic point of view. I mean, they're for nostalgia, so I don't want to just play the nostalgia card here. But also, I'm not super bothered by quote unquote the raw pixels. I as someone, as you know, I am obsessive about resolutions and frame rates and things like that. I really am mentally challenged when it comes to like making sure these things are perfect and right, quote unquote right. And yet, hey, just throw a fucking Instagram filter on this shit and we're good to go when it comes to the retro stuff. I'm a fan. I also like I make video for a living, and I like there's a lot of cool plugins to make your video look like VHS and look computer monitors. And I'm just geeky about it. And I think when it's well done, I think it's fun.
Nice. Well, I think I understood the question a little differently than you did, but I feel a little clearer on it now.
But those things are connected. It's like, hey, are you playing a game as the artist intended it, or are you playing it through the lens of fans saying, what if this game looked better and played better and ran better than it could have in 1990, 2001 or whatever it was?
Right.
That's a related question.
Yeah.
And I like that you went back to the original and you were like, oh yeah, this could be, maybe this is the way.
Yeah, it's funny. So you mentioning like that obsession with, picture quality. And I was having a conversation with my husband recently where we were talking about like watching older films or playing older games. And I was like, I don't, unless the games or films fall into a certain kind of timeless like style, like maybe a good example would be Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Like, I don't look at that game and think, wow, that looks old. To me, that style is timeless. But if I go play a PS1 game, or like, it hurts my eyes. I'm just like, oh, no. And like, no matter how good the game is, like, here's a perfect example. I love the game Parasite Eve. Love it. Can't want to go back and play it. Have thought about going back and play it. Can't do it. Like, it just
is that
it
a
hurts
fashion?
Me.
But is it a fashion thing? Because when PS1 era polygonal games come back into fashion, and they already are,
right? I've
mentioned Valheim,
right?
It's a beautiful game that when you zoom in on a tree looks like you're playing a PS1. And it's a hugely popular game. So is that your own bias? Is it fashion? And I think I start to think less about, does this game look good or bad, and more about like, does this game hold up from a mechanical or fun point of view.
That's
because
a good
that's
point.
what games are for.
I think for me, this is my 59 FPS. Fuck that, because this is my like no, I don't want to go back and play a game that like looks really ugly to me. Like I don't want to do it. Don't want to do it, and I don't really want to do it with a lot of films. I don't, I'm not out there chatting about this frequently, but like, yeah, it's one of those things where sometimes I'll see a trailer for an older film or something, and I'll kind of be like, well, is there an HD remaster? Because like, I really kind of don't want to watch it.
That's interesting. You're very focused here on the image quality as opposed to the content necessarily.
Yeah. Like,
okay.
Now, if you sat me down and you were like, we're going to watch Breakfast at Tiffany's, I'd be like, yeah, okay. It's a classic. I get it. Like, I'll be fine. But yeah, I'm also not particularly attracted to like older movies, black and white movies. Like, I'm just not.
Right. Yeah. Well, so here's what I find interesting. First, I will say, and I'm not an expert on this, but like movies are movies. They are movies as captured on film and shown in theaters for 100 years, unless you're talking about like the 1920s or something. Like they are like 8K basically. Like film is an analog medium, and it was created to broadcast a large picture on a large screen. So like if there's a film coming, if you're watching a film on TV or on a streaming service and it looks blurry, there's something wrong. You know what I mean? Like a film, the media exists and can be mastered in a way that should look great on your television. But I'm more interested in the oldness versus the newness, and I don't like this idea where it's like, back in the day, that's when we used to do X the right way, and now it's all shit, because that's crap, obviously. Yeah. But I am and to that point, like, we are better at making art today than we were 100 years ago. We are better at making movies and games and media because we've learned from everything that came before. Technology has advanced, and you can still make a shitty ass movie in 2021. Lots of them come out. But I'm fascinated by the idea that like a person growing up today watching Marvel movies, if you then put on like Citizen Kane for them, which is all the critics and scholars agree that Citizen Kane is like one of the most important films ever made, it's boring as fuck. Like, and I'm not saying it makes no sense, but I just mean like it's not entertaining by today's standards. If you look at it in a scholarly way of saying like, well, the things Orson Welles did here in this shot had never been done in movies before. That is an academic observation that is quite compelling. Am I enjoying this film in 2021? Probably not. So this can obviously be applied to games as well.
Interesting.
And I just find that really fascinating. Like the medium, the pacing, the camera work, the special effects, the storytelling has all evolved to serve audiences better over time. And so I think it's okay to look back at an old piece of media and say, wow, this thing did amazing. It's like saying, is Super Mario Brothers better than Destiny 2 or something? And they are different games.
Too different.
There is 800 hours of entertainment in Destiny 2, I assume. I've never played it. But there are only 8 worlds of like button pressing to do in Super Mario Brothers. Super Mario Brothers, arguably one of the most, if not the most important watershed moments in video games ever. But am I going to play 800 hours of Super Mario Brothers 1 for the NES?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
So that's different. That evolution is quite interesting.
Sure. Yeah, no, it really is. And I appreciate hearing that. I appreciate hearing it positioned that way, because I think that I'm kind of more of the type to kind of think, oh yeah, I just, I just don't really have the taste for those older films. Maybe possibly I'm missing out, like by not being really into those films. So it's nice to hear kind of a different overall like thought on it,
But okay, let's talk about missing out in any form of media. Are you missing out because you have not read every Shakespeare play cover to cover? You know what I mean? Like some of the most important literature ever put on paper. But are you missing out, or can you just be aware of them, acknowledge their importance, read a Wikipedia article, and say, I'm informed. I don't need to like watch the whole play. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's definitely a certain way of looking at it that I did not have before this conversation. I mean, yeah, we could, I think you always hear people who love to read say things like, oh, I could never read the amount of books I want to read. And, that definitely,
well, right.
It's the same kind of
everything.
thing. No, you can't. You really just can't.
You can't read everything, can't watch everything, you can't play everything. It's a silly example, but for me, one of those blind spots is Pokemon. One of the most important game franchises ever, beloved by bajillions of people, young and old. And I understand it. I acknowledge it. I see its influence. I can trace its importance culturally, but like, am I going to go back and play a GBA game from 97 or whatever? Like,
you're not.
I don't know that I need to, because that game is probably very beloved and nostalgic for many people. But if for me coming in cold, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I have to grind for how many hours to get the shiny Pokemon that is required to, like, it just doesn't have the same value to me rewinding time as it does to someone who is invested in that moment in time.
For sure. Yeah.
And then, as we've talked about, then you do have timeless. You do have games that are like, oh shit, this was made in 87. Holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
How is this real?
Yeah.
That's the Mona Lisa of media. You can go to the Louvre and say, like, this was painted hundreds of years ago and she is peering into my soul. How is that happening? Oh my God. Great.
Yeah.
But that's not everything.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's not. I feel like I've learned so much in the last 15 minutes. See, this is one of the reasons why I believe that one of the most valuable things that anyone can do when they're really upset about something is go have a conversation with someone else that is trustworthy and objective. I'm not upset about anything right now, but my point being is that it's so easy to get completely absorbed in the idea that your filter on life is the only one.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wait, like there's that whole dimension that I didn't even see because I can only think as me.
Yes. And I appreciate you saying that. And I'm glad maybe I provided a moment of that for you here and now, but like, I'm not objective at all. I mean, none of us truly are, but I like to tease apart, like, well, we think about, is this media good or bad? And then it's like, well, hold on. Like, is this media good or bad in its time? Is this media good or bad today versus in its time?
Right.
I just find, I'm not an expert. Find it fascinating.
There needs to be context. I completely agree that
context.
The context is pretty crucial there. So
getting back to Alex's point, did you ever grab the NES Classic, or how much emulation do you do these days?
We do have both the NES Classic and the SNES Classic. I did play them a little bit at the time that we got them, but I have to admit that I haven't picked them up in quite a long time. I know that there was an option to play like CRT style in those, wasn't there?
There is. That's what Alex was referring to. And I think there is in Switch Online. I could be mistaken because I haven't touched that in a hot minute.
Me either.
But the question for the final question for you, because I like I said, I'm a big fan. I like that filter kind of evoking the CRTs of the past. Did you ever feel compelled to switch that on, or are you not even? It's not even a.
I think it would more. I think I did switch it on, and I think for me, it's more of like, oh, neat, I remember that, and then like switching back to the regular. Yeah, that's pretty much who I am as a gamer. So
all right. I like it. Alex, thank you for the question and the comments here. We really appreciate it. Please send in yours. CRTs, what are you playing? preferences, old media, new versus new media, send it on in to have entered the chat at gmail.com. But right now, we're going to talk about what we are currently video gaming. What do you got?
Oh, me? Okay, I go first then.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm
me?
like, hey, what are you playing? And you're like looking around the room like, what? Oh, you mean me?
Me.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have been the last, to hop back just a second to kind of explain a little bit, I had a few weeks where I was traveling, and so I wasn't able to keep up with my regular stream schedule, and it kind of felt just like not being on track for me a little bit. So when I got back, I was like thinking it over, and I was like, okay, what do I really want to do? And one thing I really wanted to bring back was what I called Morbid Mondays on my stream, which is pretty much like a horror devoted night. So not too long ago, and I think I may have talked about this on the podcast, there were some rumors flying around that the developers Bloober team, who are based out of Poland, had potentially might be working on the next Silent Hill. And there's been no like formal confirmation of that, but there is a formal confirmation that they're working on a project with Konami. And they're horror developers, so people are like, okay, 2 and 2.
Yeah. They're connecting the dots.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, well, I really only know one thing Bloober's done, and it had great atmosphere, but I wasn't nuts about the story. So I'm curious to go back and play some of their other stuff. So I played through Layers of Fear 1, which I really, really enjoyed. And it was like, wow, I'm so glad I went back and discovered this. And then I was like, I want to kind of keep going through their catalog. So I decided to go ahead and pick up Layers of Fear 2, which very much has the same similar kind of navigation. So if you play Layers of Fear 1, it's first person. You're kind of navigating through this old house that seems to have all these eternal layers and horrible places that you can end up in. And you're just like, it's great. Just what I want out of a horror game, right? So this game moves the atmosphere to a ship, which like gives me such anxiety in the first place because I hate like ocean liner style ships. I've been on one once, and I never want to go again. I do.
This is like modern in the game. It's like a modern day thing.
No,
it's not like a pirate ship or anything.
Old fashioned like liner ship that they're on.
It's like Titanic.
Kind of, yes, not quite that old, or fancy, but yeah, a ship. So I'm like, fuck, okay, I'm lost at sea this time. And you play the role of an actor who is coming to work with some sort of very erratic director. And that is like, it's funny. The first game, the story was pretty straightforward as far as like the perimeters. So this game is different because I would say so far at the point I'm at, the story feels weaker than the first one because it's not as formed. So like I showed up, I was like, okay, I'm an actor. I'm on this ship. I'm doing this project for this nutty director. And then like everything just went fucking haywire. And I don't even know if we're making a movie anymore. I keep finding all these objects like where I hear children who I think are stowaways talking. And like maybe the story is going to come together a little longer, like as I play a little bit more. I think I'm about, I would say maybe like 4 hours in, and I'm not sure how long it is. But I said on the stream Monday that it feels to me like a polished haunted house on a boat simulator, which is not bad because...
No, I was going to say, yeah.
It's not bad. And that leads me to the next thing, which is the last playthrough especially that I just had. I was like, oh my fucking God, like this is so dark and so inventive that I didn't realize that there were developers making horror games that were quite on this level of like they get me. They really get me. Like I was playing it and I was like shaken up by some of the things that happen. And I mean, I can blast through a zombie game, a shooter game, I can blast through all these different types of horror games and just be like, yeah, whatever. Like I enjoy it, but I'm not scared. But I was like, this is genuinely like unnerving. which was great. That's what I'm there for.
Well, that's what I was saying. It sounds like it's delivering on what you wanted from this. It took 4 hours, but it's finally starting to pay off. Maybe.
Well, that yes, and also no. I'd say I felt from the beginning, because I was so impressed with Layers of Fear 1. I was like, okay, we're probably going to go a little further here, but how much further they went, like into the dark, is like, whoa, shit. I respect you guys, So my respect for them is really growing, and I'm also really looking forward to playing Observer, which is the next game that would be on my to-do list to play from them after I finish this. And Observer is a really interesting premise. It's psychological horror, just like, all the other stuff they do. And you're in a dark cyberpunk world in the future that has been blasted by war and plague and whatever. And you're a neural detective that hacks into people's minds.
Oh,
and I was like, man, great freaking, that's my kind of setting. And I was like, yeah, cool. Yeah. So I'm going to do that one after I complete this one. But suffice to say that I was so pleased to find that, they've been under my nose. They've been making games for a while, but they've been under my nose the whole time. And I discovered something, and of course all the games are fairly inexpensive too, because they've been out for a while.
Right.
So it definitely hyped my excitement for whatever they're doing with Konami, Silent Hill or not. But it was a nice feeling to be like, wow, this is solid horror. This is exactly the kind of horror that I'm looking for. And it's really creative and it's really unusual. And some of the options they went with to kind of create an overall feeling of dread are just terrific. And I love that, so it's been a refreshing, it's been refreshing to be unnerved by the game.
But I get that. Yeah.
And just kind of have a developer that's making horror that I'm taking a little bit more seriously. I also am super excited because last night, I discovered at the end of my day, I discovered another game that I really want to try. It's by the folks that made the game Detention, which I have not played yet and is on my to-do list. But this game is called Devotion. And
Detention. Yeah. With this the school. Is it set in Korea?
I think it's set in Korea. And we have that game on a console, and I haven't played it yet. But I found out yesterday that they made another game called Devotion, and this game was pulled from the Steam store for being too disturbing, which I was like, gimme!
Really?
But the summary says, Devotion is a first-person atmospheric horror game depicting the life of a family shadowed by religious belief. Explore a 1980s Taiwan apartment complex lost in time, gradually shift into a hellish nightmare. Delve into the vows each member of the family has made and witness their devotion. I was like, oh my God, you made this game for me. Everything in that is so my jam.
Is it back on Steam, or how are you getting it some other way?
The company is called Red Candle Games, and they have a shop where you can purchase that.
Wow.
And that's the only way you can buy it. It's not on Steam. It's not on GOG.
What could possibly be so... I
don't know, but your girl is excited. Let me tell you that. I'm like, give it to me. So that's actually what I'm going to be playing on stream tomorrow night.
I would be really interested to know what is so disturbing about a game that it would be pulled from Steam, a platform that has plenty of pornography,
extreme pornography. I also would really like to know that. But
and violence. I mean, I've only ever heard of what was the name of that? It was a Hatred or something. There was one game that was just
I remember that.
Truly violence is violence and blood and guts, but it was a lot of I'm going to murder children with this gun in a school. I don't want to misrepresent it, but it was so.
I remember
so much.
I remember that way back when
that they pulled it down or whatever it was.
Oh, I see what it is. I looked it up on my phone. Unavailable to buy following controversy over a reference to Chinese Premier Xi Jinping has put it.
Oh,
so it was not Xi Jinping. Oh, I see. The game was lauded for its atmosphere and originality, but drew controversy after users noticed an in-game poster that read Xi Jinping Winnie the Pooh moron. Xi is commonly
So
compared
why
to
would
Winnie
Steam
the
pull
Pooh
it?
in online
Yeah,
memes.
well, this is very common criticism of the Chinese, whatever he is, president, chairman, whatever.
China's online censors. China. Anyway.
Why would that affect? But why would Steam, a U.S. company serving a global audience, kowtow to that? Like, I block it in China because China is China. But like, why can't you, a U.S. customer, get this game on? That's weird. I would like to know more about that.
At the time, Red Candle said it was removing Devotion for technical and QA-related reasons and would also review our game material once again, making sure no other unintended materials were inserted in. The game never returned to Steam, and Red Candle later apologized for its severe art material mistake.
Are they a Chinese or Asian developer?
You know, I'm not sure. I would assume possibly so, though, based on the content of their games.
Interesting.
But I'll have to look them up and find out. I literally had no idea that this company existed until yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I'm eager to. Okay. I'm like, what kind of crazy blood and guts craziness is going to be in this game? And it's like, no,
they're Taiwanese. I just looked it up.
Okay.
Taiwanese
so there's
developer.
Obviously there's political complications here.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So my other question about Bloober was like, why do you think their entire catalog of highly regarded horror games slipped your radar? What happened there?
That's
over
a really
the years
good
for
question. It's weird. It's like, I will say that I kind of, as much as I love horror games, I feel like when I started streaming is when I really embraced horror in a bigger way, because there's this streamer that I really, really like. Her name is Gab Smolders, and she is bilingual. So she has, she speaks English and Japanese. I think she actually speaks a couple other languages, but she was for a really long time primarily a horror game streamer. And I was like, that's what I want to be. That's me right there. Like, I want that. Maybe not to be as famous as she is, because she is pretty famous, and I wouldn't want to be that famous anywhere.
Well, she's got that name.
Yeah.
Gab Smolders,
right.
Private Eye.
Right, yes, there's that.
How could you not be famous with a name like that? I mean, is that her real name, or is that is a streamer
her
name?
Real name is like Gabrielle something. I think that's just was like her No, actually, her real name is Evelyn Smolders. So her last name is well, she's Dutch.
Cool.
But yeah, I just admired so much that there was like a girl playing not just like the horror games we know here in America, but like she was rooting out all these Japanese horror games and playing them.
That's cool. That's
so
cool.
I spent a lot of time watching her streams before I decided to become a streamer. And at first I wanted to be like a straight up horror streamer, but then I was like, I'm doing art too. I kind of want to do that too.
I don't want to say it's an obligation of the media or an influencer or whatever, but so I'm not putting that hard a line on it, but I do appreciate the idea that if you have influence and you have and expertise about a certain thing, media, whatever, that it is good for the world to do that extra work and say, like, what about this thing that no one knows about? Or hey, have you tried this? Rather than just play like the AAA game that everyone knows. And there's space for that too. And that's great. But it's we, the audience, are looking to you, streamer, to find cool stuff that we would not,
and she does,
otherwise
like
see.
so
and
many
that's a wonderful
horror
thing.
games. Like I guarantee you, if I was still regularly watching her stuff, or even back then, if I had watched her stuff, she would have been like, "Hey, you need to play Devotion." Like I guarantee you, I would have already heard it, but I haven't kept up with her as much recently, so I've lost that. Regular. But yeah, the amount of horror games out there, especially from indie directors who are just doing insanely fascinating stuff. Yeah, really exciting. So yeah, exciting stuff. Maybe I'll become a full-time horror streamer after all. You never know.
Sure. It's making me also think that, like, because horror is not necessarily about graphics or fidelity, it's about mood, it's about tension, it's about design, those are the things that indies can pull off because, like they don't have 100-person teams. Sometimes it's one person or five people.
Mhm.
And so there are ways, we've seen this in other genres, there are ways to craft a very compelling game without the heavy duty lifting that a AAA studio is required. And I feel like some horror games probably are able to exist because of those limitations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally could see that. Man, oh man, I'm excited. I cannot wait to play this game. But anyway, I'll be doing that tomorrow, so it'll be fun.
Good. Excellent. Enjoy it.
Thank you.
I'm glad you found it's nice to be going about your life and you're playing this game or that game, and then you find one that you're like, oh
yeah, that lights your fire.
Shit.
You're like, yeah. I'm definitely feeling that way right now. Like, I love when I find a game that suits me that perfectly. So, but speaking of found a game that suits me perfectly, I really am excited to hear about Final Fantasy and your Final Fantasy experiment.
The experience, listeners will know that you and I have talked extensively about the gaps in my personal Final Fantasy knowledge because I've never owned a PlayStation console. So as they moved away from, sadly, I remember feeling like, why is Final Fantasy not a Nintendo thing?
Yes.
Why is it a PlayStation thing? That sucks.
It was once. I wonder what happened.
Because I'm not going to buy both.
Like, what was the story of that? I wonder, like, when did it move from Nintendo to like Sony, and why?
Totally.
I'd be curious.
Yeah, there is a corporate story. There's a book there. I'm assuming, and maybe it's as simple as like Sony gave them this truck of money instead of that bag of money that Nintendo was offering. Who can say? But it was a bummer because 6 is one of my favorite games of all time. 7 was PlayStation, so I never played it, but then got it on PC some years later and I didn't have the same like amazing experience as I did in the older days of Final Fantasy, but remembered enjoying it, and that was it. It is possible outside of like light emulation or dabbling in tactics or whatever, mobile games or whatever here and there. It's probably the case that I have not played a proper Final Fantasy game since a janky PC experience on Final Fantasy VII. And that's where it ended for me. And the DNA of these games is in many other games that I very much enjoy and have enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's just that window. Gosh, I remember going to college and getting paired up with a lovely roommate who had a PS whatever with him, brought it to school and was like, yeah, I love 10. I love 11. I'm loving these are my games. Or 8. He was playing 8 a lot. And I was like, man, like I never played those. Like, what are those like, kind of thing. And then I failed out of college, and that was a different story. So a lovely guy who I did not become close to because we just went our separate ways. But it was just a missing link for me. So then I asked you, like, well, hey, they're all on Switch now, and hey, some of these are on sale. Which one should I get? And you correctly recommended 12. This, even though it's not your personal favorite, but you thought it would be the one for me. And as I mentioned, maybe it was last episode with Aaron, who was also a fan, it's a warm JRPG blanket. It is everything I remember from that series. But of course, and that not modernized by today's standards, but adding layers and systems in there that are new, were new to the franchise at the time, probably are not currently in the franchise, the job system and such. But honestly, the first thing I was blown away with is like the cinematics and the character design. What's happening, as I'm sure you recall, is like there's in-game stuff that looks like is this PS2? Final Fantasy 12? I probably should have looked that up.
No, it is.
in game, as you were alluding to earlier, is PS2 era, low texture, low poly by today's standards stuff. But then it cuts to cinematics that like look fantastic. It looks like an animated film that you could put on Disney Plus today and have a great time with.
Yeah. Truly
Beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
And the setting is just cool. It's rad. It is. And you sold it to me. It was like, it's medieval, it's swords and sorcery, but also there is some technology going on here because we have airships and they're not magic floaty airships. They are like techno airships.
Yeah.
It's not cyberpunk, but it's this hybrid kingdoms and empires, swords and shields plus the airship stuff, which Final Fantasy is known for.
Yeah.
And I am always wary of mixing those mythologies together, but I think it's pretty rad here.
Yeah.
Digging the characters, digging the setting. And it's just nice to boot up a game like this on Switch and it just runs flawlessly. Like, of course, it is a game from the early 2000s, so it has its low resiness in some places, but like it just works, and it just
so cool.
Runs so nicely. And you can suspend it, and you could boot it up again, and you're in there, and they're not a frame to be dropped. It's beautiful.
Is the coolest. I love hearing that. Even though this was not like my favorite Final Fantasy, like I had a feeling that if you got into this, that it was going to tempt me to play it again, and that's exactly how I feel right now.
Do you remember? I don't know if I've said it here, but do you remember as a kid being like, wow, this game is so big and epic and it's so complicated, and only a PS2, the most cutting edge technology, could run this amazing game. But like, didn't you just wish that like you could play it on a Game Boy? Or didn't you just wish? I don't know why I thought this or had this feeling, but I just had this thought as a dumb kid where I was like, what if? Remember the toys and the prizes you could get out of a cereal box where you'd like get a shitty cereal and you'd be like, what's the prize going to be? And I, as a dumb kid, I was like, one day there'll be video games you could get from a cereal box.
I love it.
And like, that has not actually come true, but it sort of has, because there are amazing, beautiful games you can get for free in your pocket right now in 2021. And how cool is that? How cool is that? For like,
it's pretty damn cool.
I want to stop and appreciate how cool that is, because the kids today won't appreciate that they can play, Final Fantasy 12
for sure
in their pocket, and so I'm taking a moment to have gratitude for that, the coolness of that.
Absolutely.
And I'm having fun.
Yes, your inner child loves that you thought about that.
There you go. So here, my thoughts here on 12 is that the world building is complex and interesting. I'm having a hard time. The beginning of the story is, there's an empire oppressing or invading another land, and certain factions are fighting back. But but there are many people who are sympathetic to the. It's not quite a resistance or a rebellion just yet in the story, but like it's super classic. It's very Star Wars, where it's like the evil empire, and these were always themes in Final Fantasy. The returners in 6 and such things like that. But I'm having a little trouble. They don't do a very thorough job of explaining which characters have allegiance to which faction, and so I'm like gaining characters in the party, and I'm like, this one says he's a traitor, but he's not a traitor. But how do we know who's done what? And so my hope here is that either I'm tired and I'm missing stuff, or which is probably what's happening, or that it's just early. It's just early in the story, and everyone's allegiances and factions will become much more clear and crystallized. I'm sure that's the case.
How far in are you?
I don't know exactly an hour count, but
like 10 hours, 20 hours? No, right? Like earlier.
Yeah, okay. No, I would say 5 to 8, maybe, which is perhaps a little misleading, because there is, I mentioned this previously, there's a speed up function where You got to walk across this desert and fight 200 enemies that are pretty easy. Let's just press fast forward,
Right.
and you can zip forward.
That's super cool. That's super
it's
cool.
It's outstanding. It's a great feature of this remake. And so I might be like 10 hours into the story of the game as it plays, but perhaps only clocking 8 hours of gameplay because I have
because of the
zipped through
forwarding.
some of the sloggier stuff. So
okay, yeah,
we'll see.
I think you can get further in. My memory, as fuzzy as it is of this game, is that the world is complex, but for my personal taste, the characters' backgrounds were never fleshed out enough. I've been told that if I would hang in past the 40-hour point, which is when I quit, that I would see more of that. But I was like, I've had it. At 40 hours, you better not be wasting my time. Like, come on. So yeah, that was my overall take. But I'll be curious to see what yours was. I've never finished it.
You never rolled credits on it? Okay.
Absolutely not. No, I actually got, you know what pissed me off maybe the most is because I specifically found two characters, Fran and Balthier, to be like some of the most fascinating, well-drawn characters. And I wanted to know so much more about them. And I just never got it. But I'll be curious as you proceed to see whether or not you got it after you hung in long enough.
Yeah, I really like those characters. They are like the Sky Pirates. I don't really understand, swashbuckling Sky Pirate who's only in it for the money. Okay, Han Solo, we get it. Right. Like that's him. Fran, I don't fully, there seems to be a cultural backstory because she looks different. And also like, does Fran hold up in a post, 2021 Me Too kind of world? Like she's basically naked wearing high heels and a bunny costume. And I assume this is like, she comes from a different country and that's what they look like in that country. But it is not the most, what do I want to say here? Like progressive depiction of a female character in a video game.
Well, Final Fantasy are not very good at that on the whole, but I will say that my quitting point came when we went to her hometown. And I was like, oh my God, I'm finally going to get the backstory about this fascinating character that I want to know more about. And I got jack shit.
Okay.
And I was mad about that 20 years ago. So,
which is because then to what that signals to me is like, there was no intention to create a rich backstory here. She's just the sexy character. You know what I mean? And that's going to be a disappointment.
You also need to remember that this was my first Square Enix game after, a history of playing Squaresoft, and my favorite game of the whole series, 10, being the prior mainline entry. So I was like very, very pissed anyway.
Right.
very high expectations,
skeptical.
So I'm totally, I would never be like, oh my God, this game sucks. I am really curious because another really good friend of mine at one point was like, 12 is my favorite. I love the music. I love the world. And I realized that if the story is more about the world and less about the people, I don't care.
Yes. You framed it that way for me, even before I went in. And I get that. I don't want to say one is more important than the other. I need a good story character game in my life right now because so much of what I play elsewhere is like grind out that loot, next mission kind of stuff. So there was a gap in my world where I needed to like cozy up with a Switch and go on an adventure. And I guess I was worried because like Final Fantasy, especially those older games, are linear. They are novels, and it's like you get to a town and there's one weapon shop and it has 5 more damage than the town before, and that is the progress you make in a Final Fantasy game. And in a world of like infinite customization and modular and class systems and go wherever you want kind of games that I really have grown to love, that linearity, whatever, feels old and bad to me. But then, so I was worried that I would be put off by it. And I guess I am to an extent, but I'm coming at this game saying, no, this is what it is, and I'm just here for it, and I'm just here for story and whatever. And so I was pleasantly surprised to learn about this job system, which is really interesting. Where so like you get a character and they start with basic weapons, and then it's like, all right, if you want to upgrade your character, you got to choose a job, and then there's a whole license system where the job board becomes a branching tree where it's like, okay, if you want to use the next weapon, you can't just buy the weapon, you have to own the weapon, and you have to also upgrade the license through LP, which is license points or whatever, which is like experience points. Yep. And it's so I like it, and I also found it a little weird for these reasons. One is like you can kind of it's a more dynamic way to spec your character besides like I'm at level 13 now I can do more stuff, or I have slightly more hit points. Like that's there too, but the LP system is like, you know what, I really wish this character had a healing spell, because that's what I really need right now, so I can spend, instead of spending my LP on hey, unlocking this weapon, I can spec the tree toward healing magic and then make sure I have that healing spell, because that's going to help me strategically with this party system. So despite the linearness of it, there is still a strategic layer that I am finding interesting and compelling, and I hope that it gets crazier and crazier as we go.
Yeah.
That's I don't want it to get stale, where you're just like, cure 1, cure 2. Mm-hmm. Like, I hope it gets more interesting than that.
Yeah.
And then my other question about it is like, you get a character, and I don't know shit about this character, and I don't understand what their stats or their weapons mean. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, pick a job from this wheel of 20 jobs. And I'm like, I don't know. What if this character is quote unquote supposed to be a knight, but I choose, red mage or something? Like,
sure.
And I know you can't break the game, but like,
but if you can have a little bit more, yeah, no, I totally get that.
A clue.
And that harkens back on job system stuff from earlier Final Fantasies, I think, right? Mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that was handled, because there's several in before 6. I think I haven't played 3. I know there's certain job ones where it's like, well, yeah, how do you choose? Or is there any guidance, or are you literally just like, I'm just going to just do whatever I feel like doing, And
that's cool. Look, if you can get I guess I'm trying to parse the difference between like, it's cool if you get a character A and you can turn her into whatever you want. Like that's, if you play Skyrim, you can do whatever if you like bows, then you can spec into bows, and that's cool. But like, I don't think it's that. I think the game, quote unquote, wants you to spec a certain way. And I guess I'm worried that
you're going to do it wrong.
I'll do it wrong, which I know is not, you can't really do it wrong, but there is a part of the maxiness of me of like, oopsie, I chose a knight for a character that's really weak and is much more attuned to magic or whatever.
Yeah.
So
no, I get that.
It's a stupid concern.
No, I don't think it's stupid at all. I think it's about the style in which you play games. And I wonder actually if, like, I never got deep into the job system. I didn't really, the Final Fantasies that are my favorites are not really job system oriented ones. Mm-hmm. So it makes me specifically wonder, surely there are people who have like figured out, the job system and how to get the most out of it. So maybe a guide or something would help.
I'm trying, but I feel like I want to, I have Googled a bit just to make sure I'm making the, okay choices, but I really would like to not do that if I can. Okay. So I'm wrestling with that. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I can understand that. I mean, it's tough, you don't want to be spoiled, but at the same time, if the game gives you no guidance, I feel like you're like, well,
right. And I wonder in the PS2 era, how players coming at it knew. I mean, there were certainly forums at that time, but yeah,
that's true.
Playing a game as God intended rather than looking online. But Aaron on our previous episode was like, hey, have you done the Gambit system yet? And at that time, I was like, oh, I think there was some, toggle that was like gambits on or off, but I don't know what they are. And since then, I, of course, have been, the game brings you into those systems. And I agree with him. I think it's really compelling and really interesting because most other games are like, it's an action game. You're swinging a sword. You're doing an action now. Or it's a turn-based system where it's now this character's turn and choose the action at this juncture. But the Gambit system is you are programming an AI, which sounds super boring to, I think, most mainstream players. And I presume it had its detractors in its time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very cool because you're saying, if this happens, if an ally has less than 50% health, then heal them. But you're also setting priorities, which is like, well, yes, if a ally is lower than 50%, we definitely need to heal them right away. So that's top priority. But if they are not below 50%, then you're not doing that action. So please attack the nearest enemy. And it's a system of logic gates, which is then tied into your job licensing tree. So what I in my mind, and the menus do this too. The license tree is a 2-axis system. So you're unlocking and equipping spells and techniques and weapons and things that you then in a 2-directional matrix, right? You're going across this checkerboard, and then in the Gambit system, it's a linear AI if-then system that employs the techniques that you have unlocked. And I also, it's kind of tedious, but I kind of like the idea that oh no, you can't just level up and unlock the things. You need to go to the town and buy the criteria or buy the weapon to then fit all these pieces together. And again, I hope that it's, because right now it's kind of like attack the nearest enemy with the sword you are holding. Like that's and heal your party when they need healing.
Sure.
That's the extent of these routines that are currently running on my current characters. But what I hope to see is like, oh, well, I have really specced out in this direction and I've acquired this great weapon from Town C. Let me deploy this strategy and see if it's going to work in this party build. And I hope it delivers on that, because like if not, what are we doing here? If it's very just like get the biggest sword and always do attacking things with the biggest sword, then like that'll be a bit of a disappointment. But I have faith that the systems are growing in complexity, even in my short time with it, that it will pay off in that way.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
And one thing I would suggest is if you enjoy it and you're like, maybe I'll play another Final Fantasy, or maybe right away or maybe not. I think that Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition is real awesome. Like that was my first Square Enix Final Fantasy that I was like, okay. But they brought back some of the writers for 10 to write the story.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'll come for that. And I did. I think it's fucked up that a lot of people were like, oh, it's the boy band Final Fantasy. Because what it really is a story about friendship and male bonds that, in my opinion, really presented something very different for the series. And I really love that. It was very much like a brotherhood kind of vibe. And you do get to see the characters over an expanse of years at one point that really kind of nails that home. I absolutely loved it. The characters are incredibly well written and have great backstories. And those backstories get even better if you play the additional DLC content for each of them. Like, I mean, I'm talking like out of the park, kicked it out of the park. So good.
Nice.
So that's something to consider looking at. But there's also a big complex, story about warring nations too. So it's like you kind of got some of everything in there. Makes me want to replay it. Really does. I
would be so hesitant without your recommendation, because I don't want a convertible car in my Final Fantasy game.
And some people don't. But whereas I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like I was all about it, because that was something that appealed to me. But yeah, but yes, if you don't want that in your game, that maybe might not mean,
I'm being silly. Spaceships or dragons. No cars. I don't want cars. And what is this? Grand Theft Auto, Final Fantasy. But I'm being very silly and dumb. 15 is PC and PlayStation. Like, what if this is not on Switch? I
no,
presume,
I don't. Well,
right?
actually, I could be wrong, but I don't
'Cause it's too
think
new.
so. Yeah, I believe
Okay.
I played it on PS4, and then I know that when
Uh-huh.
Royal came out, Royal was for, I believe Royal has a PS5 version, maybe, and also PC. So I was like, man, I gotta buy that. I gotta buy the PC version at some point. Just because once you have a PC, you're like, I want to play everything on PC.
Sure. Yeah.
So that, but
Yep.
but yeah, terrific, truly terrific.
I am. This is going to be my story comfort blanket JRPG game for the time it has. Whatever. If this is a 30-40 hour game, I'm going to enjoy that.
It's longer than that.
And, great. Did good. And I will then decide if I want another one of those or not. And so, but I would be eager to then, if the answer is yes, I'd be eager to get one of the ones I missed and continue on Switch. You know what I mean?
Of course, yeah, because it's just such a nice platform to play on. But of course, if you decided to purchase or reserve the Steam Deck, you can always play your next Final Fantasy laying in bed with the Steam Deck instead. I hear your voice like.
Here's where I'm at. The more I think about it, the more I think it's a great, awesome thing that I'm excited to exist, and I think it's great. I just don't, as I've said here, I don't need it, and my money is probably better spent
elsewhere
on games that I can play on my great PC and enjoy them on a great PC.
Sure.
And so I might skip it, but talk to me in December. But the other thing that is very silly and adjacent to it is the play date, which is up for pre-orders today, and I'm actually waiting for an email to come in. Are you familiar? Did we talk about it at all?
I don't think so.
The Playdate is made by Panic, which is a game publisher. They published Untitled Goose Game and some other quirky, fun things. And it is a beautiful, bright yellow, handheld Game Boy-esque device.
Patrick showed it to me.
Yeah. And what I think is magical about this is that it is so beautiful and cute. It is a piece of art hardware that I do not need, but I just want to touch it and put it on my desk. But the other thing that I think is really lovely about this is like it's not a Steam Deck like competitor. It's not a Switch competitor. It's not like this is going to be my gaming platform. It is this delightful sort of like I got my Playdate and it's got 4 games on it, and then a month from now or 2 weeks from now, I'm going to get a notification and it's going to say, "Hey, here's another game that you can play now." And you're going to be like, "Okay, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to play it and I'm going to check it out, and it might suck or it might be great." And just that sort of like surprise and delight, like, isn't this fun? Like, I'm going to leave this on my desk as a beautiful clock. Like it could be a clock. It's like a Game & Watch, but it plays 20 games instead of 1 game.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
And just this, like, you just wake up and you go about your, like that feeling in Animal Crossing where you're like, dum dum dum. Oh my, whoa! There's a pagoda in the shop today. That's so cool. I need to have it.
I do.
I think that's what this is, and I think I kind of want it. I do not need it.
Well, but it's okay to want things you don't need.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe.
Isn't it?
I mean, so.
Isn't there some fun of being a human being that is that?
I don't need Red Dead Redemption 2, but it was on sale, and one day I will play it, so now it is mine.
Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to it. I just
don't see anything the matter with that. I just think that there are some, and especially for gamers, there's so much to choose from. I just think it's kind of a nice, wonderful thing, sometimes to be like, shoot, yeah, I'm gonna, yeah, I'm gonna enjoy this thing that I don't need at all, but I want, and it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think what I'm telling myself here is even if all 20 or 40 games from this subscription, and you don't pay extra, there's no fees or anything, you buy the thing, it's $180.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get all the games comes to you. And then maybe they'll have more seasons of games in the future, which would be cool and fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and it's I don't know exactly the technology. It's a screen that is not backlit. So it's a very small, very sharp, beautiful screen that you cannot see in the dark. It's like looking at a Kindle or something.
Neat. Okay, that's cool.
It is. It's cool, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm telling myself that all these games will come to the device. I'll probably dabble and look at a few of them, and they'll be cool and cute. And I'll probably never play any of those games again. But I will look on my desk and look at this beautiful, sexy little retro future clock with a crank on it and an A and a B button. And I'll be like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad this cool thing is in my house is kind of what I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
So you're saying it's okay to go for it?
Uh-huh. I give you full permission to go for it. Giving you permission to enjoy yourself just because.
To enjoy
just because
my life.
you can.
Because we can. And then I think I will look at the Steam Deck, arguably a much more valuable and utilitarian thing that really has a lot of value to someone like me, and say, no, it just doesn't fit in the current landscape of my home right now, and that's
also okay.
That's going to be okay too.
Also totally okay.
So that's it. That's where I am. So I'll keep you posted on Final Fantasy 12. I am now also, as I get to the end game and enjoy the end game of Deep Rock, I am really starting to jones for the next co-op action grind game.
Ooh.
And I don't know what or why I thought of it, but I was just like, dum. Wait, is Sea of Thieves good?
I saw that in the Discord. And I was like, you could literally just ask people in the Discord and be like, you guys want to play? Like, I was already looking at it and going, well, maybe I would try it. Like, you don't have to play alone. You're literally in a room of people that are we like video games too. So
great. I mean, that's cool. But also I don't know anything about this game, but I was just suddenly remembering oh, maybe Sea of Thieves is like Deep Rock on the ocean. And I pulled up of some videos, or I was watching a Twitch stream, and how we were talking about Wind Waker, about how Wind Waker has this illusion of being a very open, you get the ship in Wind Waker and then you just sail and you're like, oh my God, I'm on the open sea and I could go anywhere. And I'm looking at Sea of Thieves and I'm like, that ocean looks good. And so now I'm saying, I'm going to keep going Deep Rock. I'm going to play Final Fantasy 12. And when Sea of Thieves goes on sale, which it does every 2 weeks or so,
you'll buy it.
I'm going to grab it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to save that $20 and tell myself, yeah, this is going to be my next one. I think it's going to be happening.
I love it.
We'll see.
That's great.
The way that you got excited about not Devotion. What was the other one? Was it Devotion? The one by that Taiwanese team. You
Devotion,
just talked about
yes,
it. Not
it's
Layers.
Devotion.
Devotion, yeah. Where you're like, oh my God, this is totally my game. And this is totally going to be my next game.
Yes. Yeah.
That feeling, I'm getting it from Sea of Thieves. And I think this Sea of Thieves seems to have matured, meaning I think some criticism early on was it's really fun with a bunch of friends and you do the same 3 missions over and over again and that's the game. And then, as all live service games do, they added this thing and they added that thing, and then here's a new ship and here's a new customization. And so now, me as a noob coming in 3 years later, I think there will be a lot of meat there to enjoy. That's what I'm hoping and excited about.
Yeah. Awesome.
So we'll see, but that's it. That's it. All right. Closing thoughts. What are you doing? What are you streaming? You're finishing Layers of Fear 2.
Finishing Layers of Fear. Gonna start playing Devotions on stream tomorrow. I think I'm gonna start streaming at 6 so I can get a jump on playing it because I'm that excited. I'm not finished Layers of Fear yet. I'll probably finish Layers of Fear on Monday on my normal horror slot. But yeah, I just really want to play it. So that's pretty much all that's going on my plate right now. But
Great.
For anybody new to the podcast, I stream on Mondays and Fridays on Twitch. My username is HelloCocoB, which I'm sure we probably have in the notes. And we also have a lovely gaming community in our Discord. That's also linked in the show notes. So if you guys want to come hang out and just have some nice discourse about games with fellow gamers who are not like everything you like sucks, we have that to offer. Yes.
Please come on in. We'd love to see you there. And send us an email. Even if you're in the Discord or not, let us know what you're playing. It can be completely unrelated to anything we have discussed here. Just like we want to know about games that are getting you excited about games in general. Like what is bringing you back into the grind or the story, or maybe it's just like, this freaking game is beautiful. I just love to look at it. Are you going to pre-order the play date? Are you getting that PS5 that you've been waiting for? We just want to hear from you. So have entered the chat at gmail.com. That is also linked in the show notes. Always, you don't have to memorize it. Come on over there and click on it. Send us a note. And thanks for chatting with us as always. Our theme music is by Azure Flux. Our logo is illustrated by Just Call Me Katerina. And if you're listening to this on a podcast platform that has a rating system or a comment system, leave one, because when new people find the show, they like to see that others are there listening and that there is a community here. So do us a favor, leave us a review or a rating. It really helps us out. Thanks for chatting, and we will see you next time.